Okay, so we're going to go back to chapter 10 today. And again, this whole unit is about mm, social behavior, social influence. Okay. And what we bring to the social setting and what the social setting brings to us and how we impact each other. So we left off on attributions, and we said that attributions are another way of saying causes, right? So you attribute something or you cause, you're saying what the cause is. So there are two ways to explain the causes of someone's behavior. One is an internal or dispositional attribution, saying it's something about them, and the other one is a situational or an environmental situation kind of thing. And that's to say that it's something about their surroundings that led to them to behave the way they did. And the fundamental attribution error is our tendency to assume that people's behavior is due to something about them, not the situation. Okay. Biases. A bias is nothing different than a preference. A bias is another word for preference. So we have the bias to choose the most flattering and forgiving attributions of our own lapses, meaning that if we do something well, we're biased. We have a preference to think, hey, I did something well because I'm good, right? I'll say it's something dispositional, something about who I am. I'm smart, right? I got a lot of motivation or something, right? But then when we fail at something, we'll say, oh, it was something about the environment. It was something about outside of me that I had nothing to do with. We're biased to think that we're better, smarter, and kinder than others, right? And we're supposed to feel these ways. We're supposed to have the self-esteem maintenance, right? We have a bias to believe that the world is fair. This is called the just world hypothesis, right? So this is why people will say, karma, karma. You get what you get. So that's that. So we have what are called, I guess the next set of slides are going to be in the form of questions, but you're going to learn what the names of these biases are. Like the first one is called a self-serving bias. Okay, the next one is called a fairness bias or just world. Okay, so here's one. If you think that grades result from a person's intelligence and self-discipline, when these are high, grades are good, and when they're low. Okay, so what does this describe? Does it describe a just world? Is it self-serving? Is it a dispositional attribution or is it a situational attribution?
D.
You think it's D? You think it's a situation? Tosh?
That's what I think.
Tosh thinks it's dispositional, and here's why it's
Oh,
dispositional. That's okay though, because I could see why you're thinking. Well, the situation is that they're smart, but that's about who they are. It's about something about that person. Now, if you think that grades depend on doing the right things, a person earns good grades by following the rules. Bad grades by not. What's that? Follow the rules, good things happen. You don't, bad things happen.
I don't know. I think it's either A or B.
A or B, it's going to be A. It's A. Okay. So that means that, if you're doing things right, right things happen to you. It's just, it's fair, right? If you think that grades depend on quality teaching and quality educational materials, and when they have that, they do well. When they don't have good quality education, teaching, and educational materials, what do you think that is, Tosh? I saw you get it closer. And the D, and you're right, it is. It's situational. It's not about the individual, it's about the individual's surroundings. Okay. I got a bad grade because the teacher wrote tricky questions that had nothing to do with what we talked about in class. What's this an example of? And I'm getting what do you got, Tosh? B, correct. And what's the key word here? Right? I. It's talking about me, I. Anytime they're saying something about me, we're talking about the self. I got a good grade because I'm smart and I tend to do well on exams. What's this?
Jared, I apologize, but I just lost you for like the last 5 minutes or so.
Okay. So, well, I don't think you got good.
Dad, I got.
Okay.
Right after that, it froze up.
Okay. So if it's good teaching materials and good teaching, that means it's going to be a situational attribution. It's about the situation. If it's I got a bad grade because the teacher wrote tricky questions, that's a self-serving bias because it has to do with the I. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Laugh at that one. If you got a good grade because you think you're smart, what is that? I got a good grade because I am smart. What do you think, Hammer? You think it's A?
It's
B.
B.
It is B. What's the key word?
I.
I. What's the matter? You upset?
No, I'm fine.
Okay. Like I. Our attitudes, right? These are beliefs about people, groups, or ideas. We have two kinds of attitudes. We have explicit attitudes, attitudes that we consciously endorse, attitudes that we are aware of. That when you ask someone, how do you feel about this? They're going to give us their explicit attitude. Then we have implicit attitudes, attitudes that we're not aware of. And so this usually deals with like the isms. You could ask somebody, hey, you got something against old people? And they'd be like, no, I ain't got nothing against old people. But then when they go on a bus and then they see the reluctance to sit next to an old person, like they keep a lot of space between them, that means they have an implicit attitude, a negative implicit attitude about old people. I feel like didn't we already talk about cognitive dissonance?
Yes.
Thank you. That's
Sounds
where we
familiar.
had someone bite the kitten,
Yeah, something like that.
something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that disturbing
Yeah.
description you
Yeah. So cognitive dissonance is when you hold, I'm just going to repeat it now because this would be good review, is when you hold inconsistent thoughts, meaning you have a thought that violates a belief that you have or a value that you have. Okay. And so the idea behind cognitive dissonance is that, when you have this psychological tension because you're holding two inconsistent or incompatible or incongruent, dissonant thoughts, it motivates you to get rid of them, to get rid of one of them at least, right? So maybe you have a bad experience. When you watch a movie and it's sad and someone like dies, like a kid dies or something, and then you watch it and then you see your kid and you're like, oh my God, come over here and give me a kiss, right? Give me a hug, right? That's going to make you feel better. That's going to relieve that psychological tension. It's not a very good example of cognitive dissonance, but in a sense it still is because you're holding the thought that a child has died, but yours is fine, but you still want to remove that feeling of essentially of maybe you were neglecting them for that hour and a half you're watching the movie, you were ignoring them or something.
gave. I gotta rewatch this.
So the classic example that I give is when you call your gam the B word because you put gas in your car and then you feel bad, right? That's experiencing cognitive dissonance because here you are, you've done something that goes against how you really feel about your gam. Now you feel regret, remorse, right? That's cognitive dissonance. So you have to get rid of it. You have to do something. You have to either change the way you feel about your gam or you go and apologize. You buy her another bag of Werther's Original candies. Okay. Our opinions can change. Wow, especially now during the election months, right? The election, whatever this is now, season. So what the candidates will do is they'll try to they'll try to sway our opinions. They'll try to sway our values or our beliefs and to essentially get us to vote for them, right? And they'll use things called, one is called the familiarity effect. And this is simply, the more you come across a stimulus, the more you like it. Because the more familiar you are with something, the more familiar you are with a person, a place, or a thing, the more you like it, because it's no longer, I don't want to say threatening, but it's no longer an unknown. It's no longer novel, right? So we're bombarded with these advertisements. And then even within, right? So we're constantly exposed to their names. We're constantly exposed to their faces. And then they're using also the validity effect. And that is, if you keep telling the same thing over and over and over again, you believe it. They say,
Like a cult.
huh?
Like a cult.
Yes, like a cult. A cult. Yep. Like a cult. Right? So they keep saying, climate change is bad. Climate change is bad. Climate change is bad. They keep repeating it. Climate change is bad. Well, the fact of the matter is, climate change is bad. But
Drugs
the
are bad, and if you do them, you're bad.
right, and that's actually using the validity effect as well. You know, just say no to drugs. Just say no. Right? You keep repeating the same story over and over, the same message over and over. Eventually, people believe it. And that's kind of what our our presidential candidates do every time they run. Trump did it last time when he said Mexicans are bad, right? Rapists, killers, drug lords, all these things. The Affordable Care Act is bad. It should have whatever and what else? I mean, he did. He said a bunch of different things, right? Hillary Clinton's emails, Hillary Clinton's emails, Hillary Clinton's emails, over and over and over and over again, right? And Biden does the same thing. Obama did the same thing. Clinton did the same thing. Bush did the same thing. The other Bush did the same thing. They all do it. They all repeat the same message over and over and over again, because they know that one of the tricks is, the more you repeat something, the more people will believe it.
I don't.
Well, we can
My
be guarded
son
against.
said,
We can be guarded against it if we have opinions, strong opinions. Yeah.
I believe that.
Yeah. But for those people that are on the fence, though, right? And who the heck are those? Who are those people anyway nowadays? Who is on the fence? Supposedly there are people out there that are on the fence, but I only know, like, pretty much the majority of people I know. They are like extreme one or the other, with not just the presidential race, but also the Congress, man. Ooh, between Tedra Cobb and Lee Stefanik. Ooh, dang, yeah.
Well, I voted for the first time my entire life this year because I felt so strongly against a couple things. So
I did the same thing. Not last year. My first time voting was, I'm sorry to say this, I know this is bad. Um, and I'm very proud of a lot of the younger generations, because now the younger generations are really taking it up. They're doing a good job. But I voted when Obama ran. That was the first time I voted.
I wanted to.
I won't speak to this year's race, right, or whatever. But I really liked Obama. I'm sorry if you don't like that. But yeah,
So did I. I wish Obama would have ran again. I know he can't, but
yeah. All right. Anyway, so, but the terms apply. That's why I use them, because they're very relevant right now. Okay. So what about our attitudes, and like where are they coming from, right? So other than like being influenced by others, exposing us to the same thing, creating the familiarity effect and hearing the same messages, leading to the validity effect, right? Other than those, our attitudes can change or develop or are created by our genes. Our we inherit about 50% of our attitude. And we know this because we look at identical twins who were separated at birth, who had completely different environments, completely different upbringings, and they have very similar ideological beliefs. So they say that genes, or I'm sorry, they say that the attitudes kind of fall in a left-right dimension. And that is, you believe on one end, where you believe that a person, I'm sorry, where you advocate for change, social change, or support the way the system is. That's one. So think of it as like a liberal versus a conservative. And then the second part of it is still attached to that, is that when you look at and you're asked about and you think about inequality, is it something that can be overcome, or is it something that is always going to be there? Like think about, for example, see, racial inequality is that's see, okay, let's just discuss that real quick. So we have sex inequalities, and we have racial inequalities, we have age inequalities, we have economic inequalities, like geographic inequalities. But let's just go for the racial versus the sex inequalities. Which do you think is better to or easier to overcome? Does anybody have an opinion on that?
Sex.
You think sex inequalities are easier to overcome than racial? I don't have the answer.
I think they're both, I don't know what exactly you mean by sex and what aspect or what context you mean.
Oh, like, how women have different rights than men, or different rules than men, or different expectations than men.
Well, I don't think that should be an issue at all.
No, neither should race.
Me neither, yeah.
Right. But which one is easier to overcome? The sexual inequalities, or I should say sex inequalities, or the racial? Tosh thinks the sex.
Me too.
Well, I believe that because, I mean, we have women that go out to the workforce, hardworking women like Hammer, who work their butt off. You know what I mean? And sometimes like they're not appreciated enough, like a man would be in that position. They don't move up as fast in a company as a man would getting a job from a man boss. You know what I mean? Like, it's been that way for centuries, and we're still, I mean, yes, it's a lot better than it was years ago, but we're still fighting for our rights in that aspect.
That's
But
true.
racially, we are never probably going to see, not in our time, a clear vision of that.
Why? Tosh. Because you
What?
have seen, why do you think that racial injustices are more difficult to repair than the sex injustices? Because you've seen more improvements in the sex related ones than the race related ones?
Yes.
Yeah.
I've lived in big cities and in the country, so I've definitely been, affiliated with both sides of the spectrum. And when you are living in a city and you're a white person, the minorities are not white most of the time. And so you are the outsider, as to say. And then you move out to the North Country and it seems, or out to like the country up
Yeah.
here in the north, and it
Right.
seems like there's less minorities out here than there is in the cities, which, tends to be back and forth. There's a lot more to my theory of this, but I'm not gonna go on
Okay.
for hours.
Okay. Okay. Your audio is so fricked. Like it is so, or is it just me? You guys hear it like that too?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you sure we don't have a robot in the call?
But I actually got what you were saying. I actually understood it, believe it or not. That's why I didn't cut you off. But man, you should watch the video. It is wrecked. Um, yeah. So Tasha's point was that the racial inequalities are probably going to be more difficult to address because there are geographical clusters of racial differences or minorities and majorities. So whereas sex is not clustered, it's throughout. Doesn't matter if you're in an urban setting or a suburban setting or a rural setting, there are going to be men and women alike. So as a result of being exposed to these constant differences between men and women's treatment, um, it's not the same thing because you're not exposed to the differences in racial inequalities that you are in one area versus another. Hammer.
However, looking at like the workforce in reference to this, people's opinions may generally, hopefully, change in regards to racism. Hopefully, um, a man is a man and a woman is a woman. Being that a man is a man and a woman is a woman, like when I went to a vocational school in my 20s, and I wanted to be an electrician, and I actually got a job working for a company, a contract company. However, it was horrible because I was the only woman there. Um, it was a contract position. There were people from all over of all different races, but being that I was the only woman, it was challenging. And, oh, you can't do this, you're not strong enough, or you can't do this. So people's opinions can change as far as race goes, but a woman is still going to be a woman and physically unable to do these things where a man, regardless of skin tone, can. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. So I do. I do. Are there differences between men and women?
Physically, yeah, men
Yeah.
are like physically stronger. There's a lot of men physically stronger than me, but
Mhm. There are a lot of women physically stronger than some men,
there are, yeah,
but
there
on
are
average,
strong women too. But
men
yeah,
have on average men have 50% more bone and muscle mass. That's going to lend itself to strength.
yeah, and you can't change that.
No, we evolved to be this way. Yeah.
There's a reason for
Something else that's different. I mean, even our brains are different. The size of our brains, what parts of the brains we use to solve different things. Even our hemispheric sizes are different. For a man, the right hemisphere is larger than the left. For a woman, on average, for a woman, they're the same size. Um,
Huh.
yep. And so we'll address what that means, what that could mean. Um, so we evolved to be having these differences. So I'm listening to Hammer. One very clear thing that's different between Hammer and let's say Bob is the pitch of your voice. Yeah, it's higher. You sound more like a child than Bob does, and as a result, you are going to be not intentionally associated with youth. Not intentionally. We It's called sexual selection. You've been selected. Women have been selected to have youthful appearances and sounds. That's why you don't develop as much hair. That's why you don't develop a larger larynx. It's a sign of femininity in comparison to masculinity because our ancestors relied on that. So how we get past that, I don't know. I don't know. Oh, I do know, but how is it going to go? I don't know. I don't know how well and how soon it's going to go. And the truth is, and we're going to talk about this at the end of this chapter, is we have to provide people opportunities. It's that simple. We have to provide equal. Sounds so easy, right? Just equal opportunities. The problem is, and here's the real problem, is that one, one of the problems is that people don't want to. Okay, but that's a really big one. The other one is that um, it creates almost it's an equitable situation, but it's not an equal situation, if that makes sense. In that, what it means is that there could be a call for job placements and say, let's say there are 50 jobs that open up in Clinton County. I don't know for sure, but I think it's like less than 10% of the Clinton County population is not white. So if there are 50 jobs and if they have an equal opportunity, they're by numbers alone, there are going to be less people of color or less non-white people hired. But that's not how it's supposed to work. If you really want change, there's supposed to be the same number, which means that you have to focus more on non-white people. That's the answer. That's what we actually have to do.
I was actually told once that I was only hired because I was a woman because
Yeah.
they had to.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And it's
But
not
that's
that
not changing, that's forcing. And then
well,
that's
you
not,
don't have to take the job. No one's holding a gun to your head, right? Forcing
no,
the
no, I'm saying like the people around me, like
yes.
I had the job, I got the
Ah,
job. Good for
ah,
me.
no, right.
Whatever.
Okay. So it's forcing them to do this.
Forcing my
But you know
peers.
what? But do you know what that does? And this is what it leads to. By giving people the same opportunities, you're thinking, well, that's not solving the problem. It does inadvertently. Because what ends up happening is if you really want to know how to solve sexism, if you really want to know how to solve racism or ageism or religious, fervor against each other, you have to get people with differences to work together toward a common goal. And by hiring you as the token female, right, for this
Mhm.
equal opportunity, whatever, this number, this statistic, by hiring you, it gave the men and it gave you an opportunity to work together toward a common goal, which then, once you have the opportunity, you start to see each other differently. You go, oh, you know what? There's a lot of stuff that I didn't think you could do that you can do. Or there's a lot of things that you feel and think about the same way that I do. We're really not that different. We we may look different, we may sound different, but we're really not that different, are we? No, we're not. Oh, that's really what it's about. That's truly what it's about. So I don't know which one is easier to solve. It sounds to me like Tosh was right, that because sex is distributed everywhere and race or even age is not, well, age, I guess, it's kind of distributed everywhere, but then once you get to a certain age, they kind of shuffle you off into a nursing home or something. But so um yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I just want to say something real quick about the race thing.
Mm-hmm.
The race thing right now is difficult, and I'm going to say why. A lot of us, and not only the whites, but the people of color have been raised in this generation to not like each other. I guess I can't find a better word to use for that.
What do you mean by this generation?
My generation.
Ah, okay.
When I was younger, the things that I heard from not only my parents, but my peers, all the people around me were police officers. They all had the same attitude.
Yep.
And the people of color were brought up not to like or not to trust white people.
Yeah.
So that is a work in progress, but I know my attitude has changed considerably since I was a kid.
I'm not surprised. I knew this already about you, Bob. You didn't even say it, but I knew it already about you.
Yeah, I just don't understand it, you know?
Well, I don't want you to tell your story but I want you to say yes or no. I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
Your opinions of others, whether they be Black, Hispanic, Asian, whatever, just non-whites, okay? Your opinions of others have changed over the years. And yes or no, is it true that the reason why your opinions have changed is because of experiences you've had with non-white people?
Yes.
That's the answer. It's because you have had the opportunities to see them as they were, not as what you were told.
Right.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Good. That's how I knew this about you. Yay. We all love. Anyway, most of us love. We don't know who here doesn't. We know Bob loves. Okay.
I love.
Yeah, you do.
Love y'all.
Yep. It's the only way to go. All right. The
I wish
Jones.
the whole world would be like that.
Me too, brother. Me too. You know, I have to believe that one day we're all gonna die. Then there won't be anything wrong. Okay, the story of the Jonestown
coming.
massacre. Has anyone heard about the Jonestown massacre?
Oh yeah,
Okay,
I was alive.
And what did they do? What happened?
They all drank
The Kool-Aid.
a Kool-Aid that was spiked with arsenic.
Right. Yeah. My wife she can hear you. She goes, "I love Bob."
It was cyanide, wasn't it?
I
Kool-Aid was
don't know
like
what the poison is.
Yeah, it was something.
I don't recall. It's one of the two, I think. Yeah.
Why would people do that?
Well, that's the point, right? That's why social psychologists are interested. Now, is this because they were weak-minded? Is it because they were brainwashed? Is it because about the individuals themselves, or was it the situation? Right? So, to give some backstory to this, in California, Jim Jones created his own kind of church, right? But then he didn't like what was going on in California with like taxes or something. So he flew all of his congregation down to South America that starts with a G. Guyana, Guam.
Yeah, Guyana.
Is it Guyana? Okay.
Yeah.
So he flew them all down and started his own commune, started his own church, all these different buildings. But then after some time, people were like, this is not so much fun anymore. He's starting to have sex with everybody, and he's starting to not let us do the things that we were able to do before, like, I don't know, communicate to family members and stuff. So anyway, so someone wrote a letter to their like senator or something, and then the senator flew down with some of his aides, and they went to visit. And while they were there, someone snuck a note to him saying, "Get some of us out of here. He won't let us leave. We're stuck here." Okay. So so the senator takes the note, reads it, okay, puts it in his pocket, whatever, goes for the rest of the tour just to check up on, because he got that letter of distress or whatever. So then he goes back to his plane saying, "Okay, it was nice seeing you all. Take care." Goes back to his plane, and while he's heading back to the tarmac, the people found out that someone had slipped a note to him, and then Jim Jones sent his people down, his I don't know what you want to call them, his armed people, and shot them all, killed them all except for one. One survived. She faked death. Still shot them all, right? Then he told everybody, okay, this is the end. This is what we've been preparing for. So he put poison, and a cyanide actually makes a little more sense. I think it would take more arsenic. But anyway, it doesn't matter. It could be either one. I don't know, but it's poison. We both know that. He said, okay, here we go. We're all going to, and then I forget, it was like 800, 900 people simultaneously drank the poison-laced Kool-Aid. They died basically instantaneously within, 10, 15 minutes, I guess. Other people ran away. Some people actually escaped, right? But a social psychologist is interested in, what was it about the situation? What was it about the situation that convinced people, that influenced them, that this was their only recourse, that this was the real answer? And so they thought, well, there's got to be a series of things, starting with entrapment. Like, we're in California. Hey, why don't you stop by my new church? Here's a flyer. We do great things for the community, and say, hey, that sounds easy. I like going to church. This one's closer. Yeah, I've already go to church, but this one's closer. It's the same, I don't know, whatever you want to call it.
Congregation or whatever. Or denomination.
Thank you. So it's the same, whatever. So it starts small. Then he starts asking for larger and larger, commitments. Like, oh, now you got to donate to the church, 1% of your income. Everybody's like, okay, 1%, we can handle that, But then as time goes by, maybe it's like 5%, and then it's now you give everything. Now we're all moving, and these are doctors, lawyers, nurses, librarians, you name it. They're from all walks of life. These were very successful people, right? So here's exactly what freaking Hitler did, right? Identified a problem and said, here's the root of your problem. And that's what he did. Here's your problem. It's Satan. It's the whatever. It's the government eventually, right? And he goes, but I have a solution. And that's exactly what happened. And when people buy into that fear-inducing tactic of identifying what a person's problem is, providing the solution for the problem, and then giving them a new identity where you're free of those problems. That's what happened.
There's I saw a video on this. There's a recording of a speech he gave right before they all drank the cyanide Kool-Aid.
Okay.
It is creepy.
Why is it every time you open your mouth, it's about a movie?
It's not a movie, it's a documentary.
Why is it every time you open your mouth, it's about a documentary? Okay, so that's it for today. We only have 20 slides left. We'll finish that on Friday. No sense in killing ourselves, right? Oh, that's not right.
No, I bet.